Hey, and welcome to Curtis Stage Tutorials. This video tutorial is on Type in Photoshop Part 2. So if you're with me for Part 1, we did the options bar using Photoshop, and we kind of got some of the basics of the Type tool and what we could do with fonts. But in this one, we're going to look at using the character panel, vertical type, layer styles, 3D feature, just basics of the 3D feature. That one will probably be in another tutorial and in more detail, and then rasterizing type for more graphic manipulation. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so now that we're in Photoshop, let's look at the characters panel. If I go up to Window and open up the characters panel, we can see that we have some of the same options that my type options panel has up here. You'll see that my font's the same, my style's the same, my size is the same, 68 point, 68 point. But then I've got some other things going on here. Let's talk about those. So I'm going to type something on the screen here so we can kind of see. So I'm going to put some font on here. There we go. It's in red because my font is in red. You can see that it's semi-bold, and I can switch that. I can say regular. I have to highlight it if I want to switch anything. So I can switch the style here and say extra heavy bold or whatever. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about is you can adjust this sizing the same way you do in the options bar up top by dragging or inputting the number of the size that you want right there, or you've got the 6 point through 72 points in the pull down. So that works the same way as the options bar. Now right over to the right, we've got the leading. Now the leading is not going to help us out if we only have one line of font typed. So we'll type another one in a second. But let's jump down to the next line here in the characters panel where we have what's called kerning. So this is a kern between two characters. So if I highlight these two characters and I can adjust the kerning there, I could say 0, and you can see it's just a slight adjustment. So I don't use that much. If you want to do some more major adjustments between things, so essentially kerning adjusts the space between two letter forms. If I want to adjust the space between a range of letter forms, then I would highlight the letter forms, which we've got right here in our font, and I can go to tracking. So tracking is right here next to kerning. You can see that that gives me a space over a range there of a whole bunch of characters. So kerning is over two characters and tracking is over a range of characters, and that gives you that space in between. Pretty cool. And again, I can adjust it right here, or I can type it in specifically, or I can use the pull down menu here. So either one of those. Now right above here where we were talking about the leading up here, I already have some leading in there. If I hit return on my keyboard and type in something else, you can see that they're overlapped right now. Well, that's because my leading has been adjusted. So what I want to do is I want to highlight both these lines of font, and then I can adjust and see how I can adjust the space between lines then. So the leading allows us to adjust the space between lines. The tracking allows us to adjust the space between characters. So those are the two that you're going to use the most in the character panel. You also may use the character height right here. It kind of distorts the font a little bit, so I don't really like using that too much. And then also the character width right there. They do kind of the same thing. Now down below down in here, we've got kind of the baseline shift, and this is where it's occurring. It's hard to see, but you can see my little line right here that my font is sitting on. And if I do a baseline shift, it's going to shift the font up or down on that line. So you can see when I adjust it, it's going to kind of move the font up or down. There's the little dot is indicating right there where my baseline starts, and I can move it up. So this would be fine-tuning typography. If you're doing layout for a magazine or something and you want to get it exactly perfectly lined up, you could maybe use that. Now down here there's a row of interesting things. If I highlight this, you can see that I have italicized turned on. I can take it so that it's not italicized. So I've got the italicized, not italicized. There's a couple of these things that work really well. I've got text underlining, I've got strike through. So you can kind of mess around with these, and when you hover your mouse over them, they kind of tell you what they do. Superscript and everything being in small caps. Now it's not going to work with every font face that you use, or everything being capitals, all caps. It's not going to work with every font that you use, but quite a bit of them. All right, so I'm going to I'm going to apply this with the check mark, and so that's the character panel. So the character panel allows us to edit kind of a little bit more than the options panel. You'll notice up here on the options panel that I do have some paragraph adjustments right up here, and that's a whole different panel. If I go to Window, Paragraph, you're going to see that the paragraph panel has its adjustment space as well, and I could adjust if I have paragraphs that I'm typing in here. I can align center. I can also indent. I can also outdent. There's a few things that I can do in here. I can hyphenate things. So the paragraph panel can be handy if you're doing, let's say, layout for book publishing or something like that. You might want to get into paragraph panel to adjust text there. Now, there's a way to reset this. Let's say you worked on this, but you kind of messed everything up and you've got things kind of all, the settings are all strange and crazy. You can reset this character panel. So if I go up to the top right corner of the character panel, you see there's a little pull down right up here. It's not, there's a little pull down right there, and I can go to reset character, and it'll reset any individual character. So I was kind of on the N. So if I'm clicked on font and I go right here, it's not letting me get it. If I highlight in there, or if I click right at the start and I go to reset character, you're going to see that, look at how my F went smaller. It took all the styling that I put on there and took it off. So I'm going to undo that, Command Z. So that lets me kind of reset my character panel. Be aware that when you close down Photoshop and reopen it, your character panel is going to have these same settings on it the next time you use it. So just be aware that you're going to want to change it back to the way it was at the start. You're going to probably want to change the leading back to 0 and the tracking and all that stuff. All right, let's talk about on the type panel, well, in the toolbar, we've got other type possibilities, including vertical type tool. So we're not going to talk about these other two. They're for making masks, and that's for another tutorial. But here's the vertical type tool. Now, I would normally do this kind of stuff in Illustrator, as I have much more capabilities in Illustrator, but it allows some simple things in here. So you can see that I'm typing vertically, and if I highlight that, of course, I could go and change the tracking between my characters of my font exactly like I could do when it was horizontal font. All right, so that's the vertical type tool. There's no type on a path here in Photoshop. That occurs in Illustrator. That's where you can kind of type font, and you could make a drawing and have the font follow that drawing, follow the lines of the drawing, so you have more free-form font control. That's better in Illustrator, which is a vector graphics program. All right, so let's talk a little bit about layer styles. So layer styles are a way to kind of spruce up your font and make your design kind of exciting. So the layer styles occurs right on the bottom of your layers panel. I'm going to raise this up here so we can kind of see my bottom of my layers panel right here, this little FX button. And you can see that I've got a pull down menu, and I'll just click blending options. It's going to give me a dialog box. This dialog box will allow me to select certain styles on the left hand side, and you'll see them show up on the right hand side only for that layer that you're on. So let's say I want to do bevel and emboss. I can check that, and you can see that something happened to my text right here. Well, if I want to edit that, I have to go right here to where it says bevel and emboss, and then I can edit that. I can change the depth. I can change what kind of bevel it is, pillow emboss. There's a whole bunch of different ones in here. Emboss. So we can do that. I can change the size of it. Right, I can soften it. So there's a lot of different possibilities. I know I'm editing this when this turns blue right here, or blue-gray. Like for instance, if I want to add an inner shadow on here, well, the inner shadow might go on here when I check mark this, but to edit the inner shadow, I have to click on the word inner shadow, and now I can go edit that, and you can see that I can increase the distance and change the angle of it. All kinds of things can happen with that inner shadow. Stroke is an outline, so that's graphic design terminology for outline. I can add a stroke on this and change the stroke color. So the only way to edit stroke, of course, is to be clicked on it. I have the check mark on, but I have to be clicked on it. I can go to color, and I can change the color of this and click OK. So let me do that again, click OK, and now I can change the color of that stroke. I can do things like gradient overlays, which I can get in here and adjust the gradient. So just for instance, I can use one of the pre-existing gradients or make my own, and it will change according to what I've selected. So let's say I want to go rainbows. You can see all that. And if I want to edit my own, you can edit that right down here in this gradient editor area. So you could edit color stops by double clicking this little stop button right here or right here, and you can go and change the color, and you'll notice that it'll change the color in the canvas as well. So the layer styles allow you to do quite a few things to kind of make your font exciting and possibly more professional for projects. Drop shadows, all kinds of things. I would go easy on this and kind of look and see what these things do. I wouldn't try to apply a ton of them to your fonts. Then it just kind of gets a little overwhelming. Sometimes you want to keep your fonts simple in graphic design projects, so just be aware that the layer style, sometimes subtlety is a little bit better. So if I don't like one of these things that I applied on here, I can uncheck it, and then I don't apply that. Let me click OK to this, and you'll notice that over in our layers panel, where we're back in Photoshop, it now lists all the layer styles that I've created. And I can turn eyeballs on and off to kind of see what's what over here, if I like something or if I don't like something. I can even throw away individual layer styles. So let's say I didn't like inner shadow. I could drag that down to the trash, and that one is gone now from the list. I can even throw away the whole thing or turn off the eyeball completely, but I could also throw the whole layer style away in the trash can right down here. Okay, so that's pretty good for layer styles. That gives you kind of a brief understanding of that. Let's talk just a little bit about 3D. This would really be kind of its own tutorial, so we can't spend a lot of time on this one, but I'm going to create a new type layer. So I'm going to get a horizontal type, and I'm going to type something else on the screen. So something maybe 3D, that sounds good. Check mark, get my arrow tool and move it. So I don't want it overlapping, but notice it's on a layer above this layer in my layer stack, so it's going to be visually on top of it. So I'm going to move it right here. And if I wanted this to be 3D, I have to double click on the type right here on the T to edit it. So it's highlighted and I'm edited it. And I would have my options bar and I have my character panel. But right up here in the top right hand corner, if I click this button, I can convert this layer to a 3D layer. It's going to ask me, do you want to do that? And I'm going to go into the 3D workspace. That can be a little disorienting if you've never done 3D before, but what it does, it gives you kind of a temporary workspace to work in 3D. And you can see that this panel right here has a lot of stuff in it, including views and lights and all that. And you can get in here and kind of mess with this. In 3D, I can change some of the materials that I want. So if I don't want this material right here, I could change the color of that. And there's my face material, just turned blue. So one of the things I can do too is go to current view over here, and I can change the direction and orientation of this. So it's pretty cool. It gives me a lot of 3D. I've got extrusion material, so I can change what the material looks like, how shiny it is, and whatnot. I can change the kind of the size of this and shape of it. There's a little 3D shape, and I can go in and push this and pull it into space. So I can go and drag it along an XY coordinate. I can tilt it up or down. So you can see right up in here, I've got these options right here, and that's where I went to this one. And I can go and move it forward, move it backward. Pretty cool. Now let's say I get something I like, and I'm going to suggest that I'll have another tutorial on 3D text that'll just be by itself, but this will give you some idea of just kind of some of the fun stuff you can do with this. Now let's say I like what I've got, and I want to get back out of this. I can go up to Layer and Rasterize, and I can rasterize this 3D layer, and there I go. I've got my 3D object, and I'll just get rid of these 3D layer panels, and I can move this around on my layer stack just like any other layer now, and it's a 3D layer. Again, I'll have a tutorial that's just on 3D. There's a lot more we can do with that, and also Illustrator does 3D just like this as well, with a little bit even more options, so we can talk about that in Illustrator. All right, so that's my 3D type. Now, one last thing I want to talk about is rasterizing type, so you can kind of move characters around individually. All right, so let's go to my layers panel, And I'm going to open up, I'm going to throw away the 3D layer. Don't need that anymore. And I'm going to go to New Layers, or New Type, and click on my screen. And I've got, let's see, I'll just stick with this and do that one. And then let's say I want to take this and I want to move these letters around and create something else with this. So I can't do that really with a type layer. I have to rasterize this layer, make it a graphic object. So let's do that. You'll notice that I'm clicked on my layers panel here and I'm on my new layer. If I go up to Layer, Rasterize Type, you can see that it converts it into, you can see the transparency behind it with the checkerboard, converts it to a graphic layer. So now I have this, I can't add more type to this. This is now a graphic object. And so one of the tricks that I like to do is actually select each of the type and move them around individually. So I could do that, let's say, with like the magic wand tool and get a selection. So see how I can, with the magic wand tool, I could just select the W. And then I can go to my move tool and I can move this W around. So this would be a great way if I wanted to. I can overlap it with other things. I can go down here. I don't know, I'm just messing around, right? And then I can Command D, deselect that type. And now look at how that all kind of goes together. If I want to go and select the E by itself and then go back to my move tool, I can go in and get that E and I can move it. So I can't do this with the regular type tool and the options. That doesn't allow me to do that. So if I want to use type like a graphic image, I have to rasterize it to make it the graphic image. I can't have it as a font. But remember, when you do that, it's no longer a font anymore. It's actual graphic image like I drew this. And I could do layer styles on it just like I did before. So I can put bevel and emboss and do any of that stuff that I wanted to on there. So I can add same stuff that I did to the type layer above. I can do all that same stuff. So this just makes it so it's a little bit more flexible so I can do graphic work with type. So let's say I'm creating logos or something, or I want to do some unique typography as part of a design, I could do that. All right, so that's pretty good for our part 2 of type in Photoshop. Hope to see you again soon.